relationship.
When we elevate it.
Okay.
We try to.
Okay. Anyone else?
It's being aware.
Being aware.
Like awake, being in the state of awakeness and you're just aware.
Yes. So consciousness means awareness.
Awareness, yes.
Okay. Beautiful. What we would say, and it's pretty fair, tell me if you agree or not, consciousness is the way we perceive our reality. Is that a fair enough description?
Yes.
Consciousness is how we perceive reality. Now, reality is a very funny thing because two people can look at the exact same scenario and can have a description of the same reality and a difference of day and night, correct or not?
Yes.
Right? We're looking at the same reality, but we see two completely different things. So what is consciousness? Consciousness is my level of consciousness defines how I am going to perceive my reality. Right? It's funny, someone told me that there was an article in a UK newspaper about 10 years ago, and they interviewed a very rich multimillionaire family that owned a business, very successful, and they lost millions. And they interviewed this guy, the owner of this place, and they said, I'm only left with 80 million. And he said, I don't know how I'm going to survive with this. Would you have that same perception of a reality if you would own 80 million? You would say, I don't know how I'm going to survive on this. Oh my God, so many problems. But for this guy, his consciousness, his perception for whatever reason is, that's very little. I'm afraid, I'm worried. For another person, that would be like the dream. That would be like, oh, all my worries are gone now, right?
You have a million.
Yeah, give me 10% of what you have. Okay, give me 1% of. So consciousness is a very important thing in our life. And as a matter of fact, in Kabbalah, we learn a lot, and we talk a lot about consciousness. Since that's the way how we perceive reality, on a scale to 1 to 10, how important do you think it is to invest in our consciousness? High priority. High priority. And that's what the study of Kabbalah does, basically, is tools and wisdom to slowly but surely, and Kabbalah is a path. Tonight's topic is about money, but overall, Kabbalah has and teaches about consciousness of every aspect of life, and how we can slowly but surely raise our level of consciousness so we will perceive reality in the most positive way. Most positive way. Now, consciousness, that's how we define consciousness in general. And in general, we can also say that there are two types of levels of consciousness, if you really want to generalize it. There's a lower state of consciousness, and there's a higher state of consciousness. How does it manifest when a person is operating from a lower state of consciousness? For instance, they are very reactive to external circumstances in their life. Every little thing bothers them, triggers them. Lower consciousness is almost like we're on autopilot. We're not really thinking, we're in robotic mode. Right? We go into the car and we drive, and how did I get here? Right? I was on autopilot, I wasn't really thinking, but there's a lot of lower consciousness behavior that is based on lower consciousness that it's on default. Our default reaction mode is stemming from a lower consciousness. We get more summed up and consumed by the external circumstances of life. We're the effect, not really the cause. And there's a way of living with a higher level of consciousness, in which we are more the cause. We're not so influenced by the external. It doesn't have such an impact on us. We're more conscious. We're more aware. When we're engaged in conversations, for instance, we can read between the lines, right? Because sometimes it's not the words of what people are saying, it's what they're not saying, or the intention or the energy behind it. So on a higher level of consciousness, I pick up on those things. On a higher level of consciousness, I connect the dots between cause and effect. I am feeling the synchronicity. I have the confidence within. There are many, many different examples, but that's in general. And tonight we want to talk mainly about the consciousness as it relates to money. Because again, based on my level of consciousness, That's how my relationship with money is going to be. So we're going to give later on in the third part, after Alon is going to talk in a minute, different examples of lower consciousness in regards to money, and how can we tap into, because whether it's lower or higher level of consciousness, we have all levels within us. Actually, the Kabbalists teach that there are 10 levels, 10 rungs in the ladder that we can climb up to, levels of consciousness. We have all of them within us, and it's up to us. And in Kabbalah, we get wisdom and tools to empower us to raise our level of consciousness, because then our reality changes as well, especially tonight, as we're going to talk about as it relates to money. So Alon is going to take over for the next part, and going to ask you first of all around in just how I started and what's consciousness. What is actually money?
What is money? What is money to you guys?
Energy.
Energy? Really?
Means to an end.
Yeah,
Means-
means to an end. What kind of ends are you thinking of? Who said that?
Whatever that end is for you, it's a tool. It's not something you own. It's just it's like driving a car. The car gets you A to B, but it's not, how do I want to say it? Like the car is not the important thing. It's like the journey that it gets you there. Something about that energy, but
Yeah.
you don't, necessarily need it,
Yeah.
but you get some benefit from it when you have it.
Yeah, I have a car story I'm going to share with you later on. I love that one. What else? So energy. I'm surprised to hear the word energy, because I never thought that money had energy before Kabbalah. So I like hearing that. What other reasons do we have money? What do you think about money? Someone comes out from outer space, comes to this planet, never been here before, and you have to describe money. How do you do that?
It's a measure of success, failure. Measure all the things.
Oh, you're a failure. If you don't have money, you're a failure. Interesting.
Freedom.
Who said freedom? Minerva. Very nice. That's right. What else? You're always talking. You always have an answer for something. No thoughts tonight, huh?
No.
Anything else on money?
Today.
Well, listen, some of those answers are exactly what I thought about, except for energy. Who said energy? Raise your hand. You and you. Okay, good.
They're in the oil and gas industry.
Exactly. So we'll come to the energy part here after a while. But and as I love hearing you guys say that, but I never ever thought of energy when I was first making money. I had that goalpost. I wanted to be a partner in a big firm, and everything else was secondary, and that was primary. And making the money so I could buy a car, making the money so that I could buy nice clothes, buy a big house. That was my mindset. So I had the freedom to do with whatever I wanted to do. Go on a travel, take a trip if I wanted to take a trip. Had money, get some influence with politicians even, God forbid, it happens all the time. All those reasons for getting money these are external, by the way. These are the externalities of money. The things that all of us talk about, except for the two guys that said energy. So I believe that it's, that was my mindset pre-Kabbalah. So Kabbalah has really changed how I look at money. And not only how I look at money, but how money works for me. Now, in the second part, when I come back up here, I'll talk more about how it's impacted me in a good way, right? And how the old way of looking at money, how that has negatively impacted me. The card being one of the stories, which I'll hold off for a little bit later. So for me, it was about show. It was all about the show of the money. Respect, success versus failure. The people, the friends I met because I had money, those kinds of things. Those are the things that I was looking for. Those are the things that I had interest in gaining in my life. The other thing about money was that I made the money. No one helped me. God didn't help me. No one helped me. I made the money. Therefore, the money was mine. And the money was mine to do with what I wanted or not to do anything with it. But it was mine. So after the learnings and the wisdom of Kabbalah, I learned otherwise. And we'll talk more about that here in just a little bit. So keep that in your back pockets, because through the next discussion, Daniel's going to talk about the energy of money. And then I'm going to come back and talk about how my life has changed with this new viewpoint of the energy of money.
So I know people are sitting here watching us have different backgrounds as far as what is Kabbalah. Some is more advanced, some completely new and more basic. I wanted to pre-frame and let you know, obviously tonight, in the short time that we have, we're not going to be able to touch upon everything, because Kabbalah is a teaching of 5,000 years old. It has a lot of depth that people are looking for. Tonight is an introduction to it. So I hope with the few nuggets that we both are able to share with you, my intention is that you will be able to get something from it, that you will be able to remember and use. And obviously there are more classes that we teach for people to find out more. My next question is really about money, now that we define consciousness and heard a few examples from Elwan. About money, what do you think? Is it good or bad?
It's good.
It's good?
Could be bad.
I think
Can
it
be bad?
I think it depends on your intentions. It
Yeah.
could be
Depends
either
on your
good or
intentions.
it could be bad.
Okay.
I could use money to hire someone to kill someone, or I could facilitate a non-profit. It depends on the intention.
Beautiful, beautiful. And that's key, exactly. So what is intention? Where does intention start? In my leg, in my foot, in my mind, right? So it has to do with consciousness. So we learn actually that money, spiritually speaking, is raw energy. It's raw energy. And how that energy manifests and translates into our life depends only on my consciousness or intention or mindset around it. Right? We can do harmful things with it, we can do positive things, it can sustain, it can give life, it can take life. How that energy manifests depends on my consciousness. Now, as we said, there are higher levels of consciousness, lower levels of consciousness. One of the aspects of lower level of consciousness at looking at money is looking at the, as I will mention, the external aspect of money. Because money has an external aspect which is very physical. Right? I had a conversation with Juan yesterday and he interviewed me, and I told him that sometimes when I give these lectures, and I ask people, what do you want? Because Kabbalah, anyone knows what the translation is of Kabbalah?
Receiving.
To receive. So it's really a body of wisdom to teach us how to become a vessel, a conduit for all the blessings and abundance that the universe wants to give us. Now, I ask around, what do you want to receive? And so people say love, health, wisdom, peace of mind, good health, relationships, purpose, clarity. And then ask, anybody wants money? And usually people are shy or they don't say it because, we come here to a spiritual class, so money has no room for this. And it's wrong. It's wrong. It's not right. Because money has both aspects and elements in it. It has the external aspect. When we're operating from a lower state of consciousness, that's all we see in it. Right? It's the physicality of it. It's what we call in Kabbalah the 1% aspect. 1% because we call 1% the 99%. We define 1% aspect as physical things because it really only makes up 1% of reality. Everything is made out of atoms, right? And even the scientist is telling us that when you take an atom, you split it down further and further and further, at some point you get to a place called, what the scientists is called empty space. What is that empty space? Energy, right? It's beyond the 5 senses. Now everything is made out of atoms, correct? So actually this table, this chair that you're sitting on is only, according to the scientists, only 1% of real matter. What's the rest of the 99% of that physical, tangible chair? Energy. Doesn't feel like energy to me, right? It's very tangible. But that's the illusion of our 5 senses. That's the lower consciousness. It wants to make us believe that, that's all there is to it. It's just physical. So relating to money on a higher level of consciousness is to start to tap into the energy within the money. And our consciousness, the reason why it's so important to note that, because just by having the consciousness of there is more, there's an internal aspect to money, there's an energy to it, right? I shared this example with Juan yesterday too. It's like electricity. Is electricity good or bad?
Good.
It's neutral, right? It depends how I'm using it. Same with money. It's energy. How I'm using it. The moment I start looking at the internal aspect in it, the raw energy that it is, that can translate, and it's up to me to channel it in a positive way, I start activating something more divine within the money. Because it's not just energy. It's actually divine energy. I'm going to talk a little bit about it. It's divine energy. There is what we call in Kabbalah, there is light in it, there's spiritual light. It's an extension actually of the Creator. Can you believe it? There is divine supernal energy within it. And when I start to view it in that way, I start to activate that energy within the money. I start to activate it. When I start activating it, it means the money, the same money, because there's a quantity aspect within money, which a lot of people are after, thinking the more I have, the better. And of course, in Kabbalah, we don't disagree with that. But just having quantity without the light within the money, it's empty. So we say we want both, right? The optimist sees the glass half full, the pessimist half empty, the Kabbalist sees both cups and fills them up and has a complete full cup, right? We want it all. We want the whole enchilada. We don't want to settle. We don't say, yeah, quantity doesn't matter. We just want the energy. We're so spiritual. We're so righteous. No, of course we want a lot. But we're saying at the same time, just having a lot of quantity is not necessarily making us happier if we don't know how to tap into the internal aspect of it. So tonight we're going to focus more about that aspect, and that's what I can share with you. The moment we start activating and operating from a higher level of consciousness, we start activating the energy within the money. And what is the benefit of that? Why is that important? When we start to activate the internal aspect, the energy, the light within the money, that same money starts to become smarter. It starts to become more blessed. Because since consciousness creates reality, and everything is consciousness, my view on that is what's activating it. So, for instance, ever happened to you, friends that maybe bought something and then next week it went on sale, 50% off. What happened with that money? There wasn't if my money is blessed, if I activate the energy in the money, it will go to the right places. I also start to become a magnet, and the right type of people will start investing in my business, because money is energy. What am I attracting? If I'm just looking at the external aspect of money, I'll have the external, the emptiness being invested in my place. If I look at the internal, I become a magnet for the right things. I become a magnet for the right things. Another concept related to it, which is really powerful, my teacher, the Rav Burke, used to give that as an example oftentimes. You walk into a store. A certain shirt gets your attention, a beautiful dress, pair of shoes. Say, wow, looks beautiful, I like it. You go ahead and buy it. Did you buy those pair of shoes? Did you buy the pants, the shirt, the dress? Or did the dress buy you? What do you think came first?
Dress bought you.
The dress buys you. We learn in Kabbalah that actually not just that we have consciousness, but everything has consciousness. The dress has consciousness. The shirt has consciousness. And if I'm vibrating on a certain frequency of consciousness, let's say on a lower level, I will be attracted to the lower level of consciousness within the things. So I'll be attracted to the things and buy the wrong things. So we buy something, and Aaron will have plenty of examples to share, the good and the bad. We buy things and they go kaput. We buy things and, it can be the most expensive thing, lucrative, and, it gets damaged. And then we can buy secondhand things and they last with us for 20, 30 years. So if I have more of an internal, higher level of consciousness around money, I activate the light within the money, I'll also be attracted to the right things that will be in the long term. I will invest in places, and since I connect more to the internal part and the quality of it, there will be more blessings in it. There will be continuity in whatever I invest in. I will attract the right investors too. So when we start having that higher level of consciousness, when we start viewing the internal aspect within money, we start to activate the consciousness, the light, the positive aspect, positive energy within the money. Yeah, maybe we can buy happiness. And I want to share with you two more aspects of consciousness that we can apply, meaning operating from a higher level. So the first one we said, very basic, is how we view money, right? Simple. It's really not, it's just a switch in consciousness. It's just to remind us. So the first aspect is looking at the internal aspect within the money, acknowledging that there is energy, that there's something divine within the money, And by acknowledging it, I'm activating it. So that money becomes smarter and becomes blessed and will have continuity. Second part, after acknowledging, is also appreciating it. Appreciating it. The reason why sometimes people allow themselves to be wasteful with it, right? And the concept, the conception of money changes based on how much they have, is only because they're not acknowledging the divine aspect within it. So if I have a lot, I can spend a lot. Who cares, right? So I won't turn off the lights when I leave the room. Who cares? And it's not about being now fanatic and saving money. It's not about that. It's, yes, be generous, spend, enjoy. But at the same time, if we have the consciousness of appreciation, it's not just money that I made and now I can do whatever I want with it. I want to appreciate there's something divine, there's energy, there's light, and I want to be respectful, I want to be appreciative of this. There's the light of the Creator within it. I want to acknowledge first and then appreciate it. The more we appreciate something, the more we appreciate the light within the money. It's also another spiritual law. The more the universe trusts us with it. Because it's connected to the second point that I want to share, the third point, which is how we're viewing money. There's two modes to view it as it relates to us. Either we're viewing it as I'm the owner of it, or what is the second option?
It's the owner of you.
It's the owner of you, that's another option, that's true. The third one, alternative one, is it belongs to God, okay? I'm the manager of it. I'm the manager of it. So related to the first point is, the more I appreciate it, the more actually I can become a conduit for it. Because if somebody would to lend you, a car and, said, take care of it please for me for 6 months, and then the owner comes back and sees it has scratches everywhere, it's a mess, it's dirty, it stinks, and he said, what did you do with it? Oh yeah, I took it for a ride at a party in it and, lent it to a couple of friends. You see, whoever you lend it to didn't appreciate it, you're not likely to trust them again with it. Right? So too does the universe operates with us. The more we appreciate the divine energy within it, the more the universe can trust us with it and give us more, and we can become conduits for more. And useful for that is to have the consciousness again, always asking ourselves the question, am I the owner or am I the manager? Because owner consciousness is part of the lower consciousness. Because from that consciousness come many, many, many side effects that we don't want. The side effect of fear or worries attached to money is a side effect because I'm thinking really that I'm the owner. As long as I'm thinking I'm the one, I worked hard for it, I made the money, it's mine. I know many people that work very hard and don't have. Hard work does not mean that I deserve it, that I am entitled. Right? So when I have that owner consciousness and entitlement, then I become dependent, then I'm afraid, I'm worried, and the many, many side effects that come with it. When I start to become aware that I'm operating from that lower consciousness of ownership, of entitlement, of attachment, and I start to switch gears to a higher consciousness, saying, okay, right now it's been lended to me, it's been loaned to me. How can I manage it in the best way possible? Because I know that it's not really mine. I acknowledge that there's something bigger to it. I acknowledge that there's light, there's divinity in it. And now the question is, how can I use it in the best way? How can I manage it in the best way possible? And that alleviates us from a lot of worries and fears and actually increases the circulation and flow of that. So those are just 2 or 3 points. 1, 2 or 3 of many, many more that we can learn. And again, they sound even basic, common sense, some of them, but I promise you that oftentimes we forget and we don't actually use it. So tonight is not so much about teaching you maybe brand new things, maybe some of them, but it's more about actually, okay, how much of that do we understand intellectually and how much of that are we really practicing? It's actually about really not just hearing. Consciousness means it's second nature. I really think that way all the time. How many of us think and acknowledge all the time the internal aspect within the mind? How many of us acknowledge really all the time that I'm operating from a lower consciousness, higher consciousness? How many of us acknowledge really, am I the owner or am I only the manager? So we want to practice it in our day-to-day life until it becomes second nature. So Alon will have a few more insight to share with us practically from his day-to-day life, operating with money and from the business point of view.
Thank you, Daniel. So when we started, I asked the question earlier, what is money? And 2 people said energy. How many people think, well, you just heard, how many believe now that money has energy in it by show of hands? How many still aren't convinced? Yeah, so I want to talk to you about that because I was that person. I was in, how does money, how does a bill have energy in it? So one of the key things Daniel mentioned, we're going to get scientific here by the way, so this, because it's important to make the link. Daniel talked about everything having atoms. Well, that piece of paper has atoms in it too. E equal mc squared. We all know who said that, right? E equal mc squared means all matter, this little piece of paper, has energy in it. So that formula itself is what convinced me to understand and to make the link that energy has, that money has energy in it. So I'm not here to convince you yes or no, but maybe that helped, it helped me. And for those others who might be sitting there and wondering, how does that happen? How does a bill have energy? So the idea is if you accept that as a premise, that bills, that money, that gold coins, bills, has energy in it, if you accept that as a premise, then you really start an opportunity to really change how you can change your life with the right consciousness behind money, and how you spend money and how you make money. Earlier I talked about how I thought when I made the money that it was me making it. No one else. There was no God. It was me. I had the job and I was given a task to do. I did it and I made partner at this big firm. It was all about me. Today I know differently. For example, the people that worked for me had to deliver quality service and had to do it in a sustainable fashion. So that was part of my success. That's not attributed directly to me. It's to them. I may have had countless people, clients tell me no, they don't want to buy, but one decided they wanted to buy from me. That person has to have a piece of part of the pie for my success. My peers, my family, my friends. There is not about me making money, and in fact, there is a divine connection here with where the money comes from. Daniel was talking a little bit about that. So when I started to think about that and use that way of thinking, which is very different than the way I thought of before, that it's not about me, that the money is coming from a divine source, and that there's a lot of people helping me achieve the success in my life, when I started realizing that, things start working differently for me. So it's important to understand appreciation, and to appreciate as deeply as you can with where the money's coming from. It's important to understand that money has energy. And it's important to understand the consciousness behind that. So if I spend the money, as I said earlier, and I spend it to show off, I bought this car, very ultra luxury car. And I killed for this car.
Man, really?
Yeah. So for me, it was an extension of me. It's who I wanted to be seen as in the world. Some successful guy, someone who's obviously made some wise money decisions, some wise investment decisions, some good momentum in a professional area. That's what I wanted to be seen as.
Every time I came to visit here and he picked me up and said, "Where's your car?" What was your answer?
It's in the shop.
I never saw that car. I saw it maybe once or twice. It was always in the shop.
That car, this same car that Daniel was talking about, that I'm talking about, that's what happens. That car, I hit more potholes. I have other cars, by the way, and I don't hit the potholes that I hit in this other car. That car I bought for show, and I hit lots of potholes. It was always in the shop. Discount Tire, they know who I am. Or going to the dealership, they know who I am. Everything went wrong with that car. After 5 years, I finally sold the car. It took me a long time, but 5 years, because it's tough. It is very, very tough we're gaining knowledge right now. All this knowledge is permeating in your brain, and you're going to check it off. Okay, I understand the knowledge. It's different to apply it. All right, so you're going to walk away with all this knowledge, this new knowledge in your head, whether you accept it or not accept it. If you accept it, it's not just accepting the knowledge piece. It's how do you apply that? How do you practice that? 5 years. And this was, I've been a student of Kabbalah for a little bit more than 4 years, so well within my, as a student in learning the wisdom of Kabbalah and understanding these precepts we're talking about, it's still very hard to apply. I finally applied it, and it just opens up a lot of opportunities that you just don't expect to open up. Clothes, buying just the best clothes that I could buy, that money could buy. So those clothes where I spent tons of money on, today the moths eat those clothes, and they don't eat the stuff I bought at Target. I've got Target clothes, Target shorts, Target shirts and shorts, and moths stay away from that. Things don't just start to rip apart, but the expensive clothes I have that I bought again with the consciousness of being, of show, of being some, promoting myself as someone to be respected out in the working world. That's the consciousness that I used to buy the clothes. Well, the clothes are tattered now. And so the stuff where I just casually bought because I needed to wear something to keep myself from being cold or something.
The moral of the story is buy a cheap car and wear shirts from
Target.
And this is a good point because that's not really the moral I want to give. It's okay to buy those things, the big expensive car, the nice clothes. It's about the consciousness. All right. So if you understand that you're getting into those things and you're really you recognize where it's coming from, and you recognize that you're tapping into the internal part of the energy, things start happening for you, and then you don't get tattered clothes, etc. So recently, I was taking a trip to New York, and I needed to come up with a large, for me at the time, was a very large source of cash. And I didn't know where it was going to come from. But I had to go to this event. It was an important part of my life, and I needed to have this amount of cash. And suddenly, and it was suddenly, within a day, I get this new influx of money that was, I don't know where it came from. I mean, I know where it came from, but it was totally unexpected. It came to me, and I was able to do the thing that was really important. And the thing that I was going to be doing was very much divine driven. It was something that was very much focused on the connection with the internal aspects and the light, the things that we've mentioned already. Had I not kind of did the switch in my life, I don't know that necessarily would have happened. I'm not telling you that you're going to experience miracles in your life necessarily. I'm telling you that I experienced miracles in my life when I kind of have a new consciousness of where the money is. So those are some of the stories I wanted to share with you. And I think at this point, Daniel's going to give you some tools that you can actually use in practice.
Yeah, thank you. Before actually the tool part, yes, you have a question? Yes.
So this kind of ties into the consciousness thing. How do you know it's your consciousness of money and showing it off, or it's not like someone putting the mati on you? So you know, the humility, you put on this expensive stuff and you attract the evil eye, you know? So, you know, how do you know that's you or somebody by
But it also
showing off?
started with your consciousness. So if your consciousness is operating from that show, you will attract also maybe, you know, the evil eye and negativity from outside. But it always starts with us. Even external influence of negativity, we must have created an opening for it for us to affect us. So it always starts with us, always comes back to us. Any other questions before we go on?
I guess the only thing was kind of like, you know how, like, I just want to make sure I'm like putting the right energy to the money, because I think I'm doing good with the way I started respecting money because I was a little loosey-loose, and then like right now I'm not where I want to be, but like I do have that little fear that what if like I don't respect it, you know what I mean? Like what things are, okay, I think I answered just as
That goes back to the humility
glad.
of wearing the fashion clothes to attract
Glad
that
I could
energy.
help you. Okay, what I want to do before the next part, what?
Yeah, no, her point was correct. I agree with that.
What was that again?
So, you know, the thing I was saying to him about how do you know it's your consciousness or it's someone putting, you know, mandeo on you. And he's saying, you know, well, it all starts with you anyhow. So what you're saying, you know, it's still starting with you somehow. So you need to be humble about it because it's that lack of humility that's putting that out there to bring that negativity to you like a magnet.
Yes.
I have a question. So let's say you know in your heart and in your spirit that you're supposed to have this, whatever this object is. Okay, so let's say it's the expensive car, or let's say it's fine clothing, or whatever the case is. How do you shift your consciousness to ensure that your relationship with money is pure, so that whatever you're receiving is pure and it will be preserved? It won't be in the shop every week. So what work would you need to do? Because it's not, I don't think that you're saying we shouldn't have nice things, but there should be a shift in the consciousness in terms of how you attract it. So what is that shift exactly?
That shift, there are many things that can help us, tools and more wisdom. I want to keep it basic as possible. So basic thing that we can start doing is pausing and asking question. Where am I operating from? Because we're so accustomed to operating from a lower consciousness. Part of the lower consciousness, as we said, is robotic and it doesn't think really. We see something nice, I go for it. Feels right, looks good, why not? I can afford it, why not? So just the mere fact that when we pause and we ask the question, where am I coming from? Why do I want this? Where am I coming? What's the intention? Where is my consciousness? Do I want it for this reason? For what? Just when I pause and ask the question, that's already a huge step forward. And it's a small thing that can create a paradigm shift already. Yeah.
Thank you.
I want to take just 1 minute, and before we're going to go to the last part, sharing with you some tools, I want you to turn to the person next to you, and if you're streaming or online or in the other room or here, and share with the person next to you one thing that you got out of tonight's class, tonight's lecture. Please, go ahead.
I will share with you guys downstairs. Just kidding. Share over there. I'll do my homework over here.
And then live interaction if you want to have any questions live.
We'll ask him. We'll ask him the same.
It's like this good.
Yes.
I want to kind of like my energy.
What we would like to go through in this so much talking about money, we talk about so it's a little bit more than that.
All right, guys, ready for the last part? Yes? Okay, so I'm going to put it up on the screen, but we're going to read it out as well. I want to leave you with 2 affirmations, basically. Because we said since everything really starts with our consciousness and our mindset, this is something we can take with us. And it's suggested. We can use a sentence we can relate to better. But those are the 2 that I suggest with regards to what we talked about tonight. So one is, I acknowledge and appreciate the divine energy that exists within my money. Right? Because we said it's not about intellectually knowing it. Intellectually, maybe we knew it before. But how many times we wake up and that's what's our mind? We know that. So until we get there and tap into that higher consciousness, it helps to repeat it and really enforce it and tell it to ourselves. Okay, I acknowledge and appreciate the divine energy that exists within my money. And as we said, based on tonight's class, that switch by itself already starts activating the internal aspect and the energy and divinity in it. And the money that I do have, whether it's a lot or a little, starts to become activated, starts to become smarter, starts to become more blessed, and will have more continuity in where I invested, and I'll attract also better things. The second part, second affirmation is, I'm managing the unlimited, illogical abundance and sustenance given to me as a pure channel. So that goes hand in hand with what we said basically, I'm not the owner, I'm the manager. Okay? And want to view yourself not just as a cup that has a bottom and an end, but we want to view ourselves as channels. What's the difference between a cup and a channel and a pipe?
One holds the other.
It is bottomless, right? It has no ending, right? Endless water can float through that. Right? And there are many, many more secrets about it. What someone mentioned about sharing is definitely a powerful tool of it. We learn a lot more in the basic classes, generally in life and also in regards to money. So those are two affirmations that I wanted to share with you. Any other questions? Anything else? Speak up or be silent forever.
Why did you use the word logical?
Okay, because we use unlimited and illogical,
Yeah.
right? Unlimited and illogical, because part of the lower consciousness oftentimes is logic and our five senses, right? Early on, what Aaron was saying, right? He didn't expect that money to show up from that source, right? So sometimes, I'm not saying logic is bad. Thank God for logic, otherwise we would cross the street in a red light and hit by a car. So there is purpose for logic, but sometimes logic interferes with the sustenance and abundance that the universe wants to give us, or we're thinking small, right? Logic is also part of thinking small. That doesn't make sense. Success is not in my DNA. I didn't work hard enough. Sometimes we think we need to work so hard in order to deserve that sustenance. So many times logic is blocking the sustenance to flow. So we want to think, if there's really energy, there's light in it, there's unlimited. How much sustenance, how much abundance is there? Unlimited. Illogical. If I view myself as the owner, is how much I put in, that's how much I deserve. If I view myself as a channel, I view myself as a conduit and a manager, I don't know. How much do you want, how much do you trust me? Maybe it's more than what I think. So we don't want to limit. That's why the choice of word of unlimited and illogical. Good question, thanks. Anything else? Any questions? Do you want to add anything? Anything you have to
No, I think that logic puts box around something, and if you box yourself in, you will never get out of that box.
Okay, so I just want to know,
What?
the monkey part. You refer to as a pure channel. Like, what does that mean? Like a pure channel?
So none of us is a pure channel, but we want to make as much effort as possible to become aware when am I acting from a lower consciousness, and then to strive to get to operate more from a higher consciousness. So pure channel is another way of saying I want to operate from a higher level of consciousness. Lower consciousness, is when I use logic, when I use selfishness or limited. Pure channel is more higher level of consciousness.
I would also add that when you talk about channel, we're actually talking about being the caretaker. It's not us and it's not due to us. We're just a caretaker of the money. It's coming to us at this point in time for a reason, and it flows through us, it flows out of us for a reason.
Yep. What about people that don't spend any money? Like they save everything. Like it's like very stupid. Like they limit themselves on everything because they just want to hold on to the money.
Yeah.
Like,
So
how
what
do you-
consciousness do you think does that reflect? Lower or higher consciousness?
Lower.
Lower consciousness, right? So we talked about appreciating it, and not be wasteful, but it doesn't mean to be stingy.
Could you repeat the question? Because maybe I'm afraid a little bit
Yeah,
questions are not going
Absolutely.
through the.
So Eddie was asking about what about people that don't want to spend any money, hold on to their money, stinginess, right? So as I said, that's definitely operating from a lower consciousness that will reflect later on in my reality. It won't serve me in the long term. So when we say appreciating and not wasting, it doesn't mean become fanatical and stingy. The universe wants to give us, the universe wants us to enjoy. but it's again the consciousness that we're coming from. So if I have the right consciousness and I'm a pure channel, part of it is also enjoying and know how to enjoy and not to be stingy and worried and afraid.
And you're actually going against the universe. If we're supposed to be conduits, that money flows to us. We don't hoard it. If you're hoarding, you're going against what the universe wants. So that we're supposed to be able to share that with others, to buy
Yeah.
stuff, etc.
Yeah, for sure. Yes.
What about with the mindset of money comes and goes? So like I think of it that way, you know, and I think that's why sometimes I have a problem with that, you know, because I look at money as, hey, I'm gonna, you know, I earn the money and I spend it freely because I know it's gonna come back to me. Is that operating in a lower consciousness?
I think it depends. Should I repeat the question?
I think
They picked it up?
Yeah.
Okay, good. I think it depends, you know, it depends. Definitely, I'm a firm believer that, you know, like one extreme that you said was holding on to it and being afraid and worried. There's another extreme maybe where I said, oh, I'm not afraid, I'm not at all, and you know, that's the other extreme. I think it's somewhere in the middle. And that's really the consciousness that we want to have. I certainly believe that, you know, it's not meant to stay still. Because money, the energy is really activated when it flows, right? So part of it is investing, buying, it comes and goes, definitely. It should be movement. I think a healthy relationship with money, there should be movement, okay? Just like water, right? If water stands still for too long, what happens to it? It accumulates bacteria, it rots, right? It becomes bad. I think, you know, same thing with money. If it stands still for too long, you know, it's like you don't really activate the light within it. Doesn't mean everywhere I spend it, anywhere it goes, no, again, it's a fine balance.
There's a famous book by a Japanese, I'll say he's a poet, but and he wrote a book about water. And he took pictures of water that were in containers versus a lake, a free-flowing lake. And the one in the free-flowing lake, there was a lot of crystals behind it. But the crystals were malformed inside the contained. So just like water, money does, it needs to be flowing. In Kabbalah, there's always a big emphasis on balance. It's never this, it's never this. The ideal spot is to kind of be in balance.
All right, guys, I want to thank you so much, all the people streaming us in the other room and here, and thank Juan again and Aaron. It was really fun, it was a pleasure. There was so much more that I would like to share, but we're limited in time. I do want to leave you with one thing for those who are interested and curious to acquire more about Kabbalah. Again, this is just the tip of the iceberg. There's so much more to share. We're going to start. Juan has been so gracious to give us this space for our upcoming classes. So I want to share with you, there are a few coming up. I want to share with you one for those who want to learn more about it. It's called Kabbalah 1, and it starts on Wednesday, June 28th, here at this location at 7 p.m. It's a 10-week course. We come together here once a week. The class is about an hour long. It's this format, it's interactive, there are mentors, there's workshop, and we get to learn some of the basic essential teachings. More in the bigger picture about life and why we're here, why there are challenges, what's the purpose of those challenges, what's part of the transformation of that. We're going to talk about sharing, we're going to talk about our life's purpose, a lot of the basic teachings. So once a week we learn a concept, then we go out to the world and apply it. The world out there is the experiment basically to what we learn here. Overall, this 10 weeks course is the most life-changing and transforming course that the Kabbalah Center has to offer from the feedback that we get. So I want to put it out there for those who want to find out more. We have information on Facebook.
Where do we sign up?
You can do it online. You can do it on facebook.com/Kabbalah Houston. It's also on Eventbrite. The course is called Kabbalah 1. Okay, and it starts on Wednesday, 28th at 7 p.m.
What's the cost?
$49.95 for 10 weeks.
$495.
No,
$49.
$49. Yes.
For 10 weeks?
Yeah, $50.
Oh my God. And how long is the total program in Kabbalah?
What do you mean total program?
You have level 1.
There's level 1, 2, and 3, and then there are further on more advanced classes if people want to take it. Yeah.
Some are free and some aren't. So
If you miss one class or the other, the classes are recorded, so you can always get the recording and listen to it later.
And it's every Wednesday?
Wednesday starting on the 28th.
At what time?
The 20th.
7 p.m.
To what time? 7 to what?
7 to approximately 8. 8 to 10.
July 20th, you said?
No, June 28th.
Oh, okay.
So in
after?
No,
I'll be on.
Yeah, we don't have the date yet, but there will be. Yeah.
It's just gonna be more on Kabbalah than anything else, right? It's a Kabbalah
Kabbalah.
class.
Yes, just Kabbalah.
Can we watch it online?
You can also watch it online if you prefer. A lot of people find it helpful to have human interaction and interaction with the workshops, but if you can't, there's also an option to watch it from home.
So we can sign up right here, right?
Sorry.
You can just go here to Central Houston.
Let me understand it. It's
Maybe you want to tell the
$49.95
people downstairs that you can meet them downstairs.
It's a good deal.
Yeah, so I'll meet you guys downstairs. If you have any questions, I'll be here to answer it.
Okay, so don't be shy, come up here. And I don't know if you have any questions on the viewers streaming, or maybe I don't know, receiving for the sake of the. Okay, they're going. But anyhow, we'll try to go back and reply to your questions, and maybe you can dismiss. No?
Yes.
Thank you guys,
Thank you
appreciate
very
it.
much.
So we're coming downstairs.
So, answer?